All right, Bailey, let's do a little fan graphs free agency as we get here. How much, full disclosure,
Mhm.
this is kind of my first day fully diving into it. You know, for the year, you talk about who's going to be a free agent and the Dansbys and the Trey Turners and all of that. But with it starting Thursday, which is crazy, a little lockout effect, feels like Houston literally just had their parade. Um, as we get into it, I don't know. Like, normally I feel like I have my takes written up and it's like, oh, that guy's going to be a great fit there. I'm kind of lost, man, because
Yeah.
it's the second year we have a crazy shortstop free agent pool, which hadn't happened until last year, basically. I remember digging through old years and it was like Jose Reyes. You had to go back to then when it was the last time that like a prime shortstop hit free agency. Um, I don't know. Do you have anything early before we start digging into some of the big guys or maybe a weird Bailey one that you're like, Quintana is going to end up here?
Yeah. It feels like it feels top heavy to me. Like there is like some pretty clear like cutoff once you get past those maybe first six or eight guys. But also, I mean, it's all players that are like incredible, but like you're a little worried about them. Like there's no because you just don't like. I mean, Aaron Judge just had probably the best season anyone has had in about 20 years, but you know, he has his own history. deGrom's a free agent. He's probably the most talented pitcher of a generation, but he's a little scary too. And so, you know, even some of these players like Correa. So top heavy, scary, but boy, I mean, just incredibly talented. Uh, there are franchise changing players out here for sure.
And let's start with Jacob deGrom because you're right, Bailey. You phrased that beautifully. I'm glad I kicked it to you because in a way this is unreal. Jacob
Yes.
deGrom has an argument to be like the most talented starting pitcher ever.
Yeah.
He's also turning 35 next year. He had kind of a weird thing at the end of that 21 season. He kind of like mentioned he was hurt, and then we didn't see him for basically a calendar year. He hits free agency the year after Max Scherzer sets a new bar as his teammate. Uncle Steve proves with Edwin Diaz that he's not joking around. It looks like, and correct me if I'm seeing this wrong, that Fangraphs, we should go off the median crowdsource.
That's what I would do.
The median crowdsource is 3 years, $40 million a year, which is $120 million for 3 years as Jacob deGrom from 35 to 37, basically.
Mhm.
What are you feeling? Do you feel over under? Do you think, are we finally going to see like the Texas Rangers have been the sleeper for Kershaw the past couple years and things like that? Are we going to see an oddball, or does Uncle Steve roll it out? And where do you think it lands?
I mean, I do think it's interesting because you know, you say yourself like Scherzer sort of set the bar for like what that high AAV deal can do. You know, when you're talking about, you know, like a 3-year deal, I think Scherzer was at 3,130, if I recall correctly, somewhere in that range. I would probably project deGrom to beat that. I would put him 3,140, which would be insane to think about, but probably like, I guess that's 46 and, you know, 600,000 or 600, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
that AAV, 46 million AAV basically. Um, but yeah, as far as like where he's gonna go, I mean, it's interesting because when you're talking about that much money tied up in one player for every year, it really does sort of limit your possibilities. Like there's only so many clubs that would be even willing to hand out a deal like that. So if it's not the Mets, you know, the list is pretty short. So, you know, if I had to name a favorite for him, I would still probably go for the Mets versus the field.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And you're right, and I'm interested to see where we land on these median crowdsources. I feel like median, I don't know. For the top players, it still feels low. I remember looking at
does,
Fangraphs
yeah.
last year because you have to put yourself in the seat of a front office because it's what you just said. Okay, do I get permission from my owner to even go for this? And that probably brings you to 5 teams. And then from there, if you're a GM and you have that permission and you've waited your whole life to become a general manager and a guy that is arguably the best starting pitcher is available, and whether you're playing out of the park baseball or whatever you're doing, you can add that guy. You can make whoever's on your rotation, you can make them the 2. And that's the difference between $40 million a year or $42.5 million a year. That 120 for 3 feels low. And hell, if you're Jacob deGrom, you probably in your head think you're Verlander. I have no idea where he's at with baseball, if he wants to be in the grind till he's 45. But I don't know. If you're willing to give someone 3 years for 40, are you willing to give 4 years? I think so. And willing to get hurt there. So I don't know. I feel like if 3 years 40 is the bar, I think the AAV is either over that, or I think it would be like 4 years for 40. And
sure.
a team like Texas would say, hey, if I don't think Texas is going to do it. I don't think Uncle Steve is ready to get beat yet, especially for this guy. But yeah, I think both of those feel low. Speaking of, you mentioned the big fella, BBD's Aaron Judge. The best. How about this, Bailey? You're in the numbers. Is best off season or best season ever? Like, how do you truly encompass it between what relievers doing nowadays and comparing it to Ted Williams and Babe Ruth, like steroids era? Do you have to take a stance on it, or can you just clap and say like, good job, big fella?
There is an era that I think we're talking about where we can say Judge had the best season, but the era is what I would call the post Barry Bonds era.
Yeah.
Because no one's touching 2001, 2004. But once you get past that, and so, we're going to 2023 now. So like I said, almost 20 years, this is the best individual season a player has had since Barry Bonds.
And now we're gonna deep dive into Ted Williams and Ruth. No, that'll be another day. Aaron Judge, he turned down 217 for 7, 217 for 8.
13, and then because there's like plus the 1 year.
Right, because they were adding it on.
30.
He is going to twist the knife as hard as he can. They have the median crowdsource here as 8 for 37.5, which comes out to $300 million. For me, and maybe I was going to say I'm too close to the situation. I've said hi to his wife twice. I'm a Yankees fan.
Wow. Biased.
So, yeah, I can't. This is like college game day when someone's calling the game. I wish I could say, but I'm too close to it. $300 million in my head has been the minimum for a while. Basically, since he turned it down, and even before he had this season, I think when you turn down 217, maybe if he had a solid year, maybe you're looking at a 250 just so you can, I beat it and I beat it significantly. He had the best season ever,
right?
Arguably. So that 300 million number feels low to me, and maybe what gets attacked there is years, but Aaron Judge is going to be turning 31. And again, where I probably am too close to this, and this sounds like, WFAN radio time, but if they don't sign Aaron Judge, they're not the Yankees anymore. He's the best player. True. He's a free agent. So with that, I'll give it to you.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not sure. We talk about, how the Astros have handled these situations. I don't think the Yankees have that. I don't think they have the factory of we're just going to keep producing like surplus young baseball talent. They have a good farm system, don't get me wrong, but it's just not like automatic for them like it is for a Houston or even like a Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Aaron Judge free agency and just, is he going to Yankees or is he going anywhere else? I do sort of feel like the team to like watch out for, kind of lurking in the shadows, is the San Francisco Giants. I just think he is the type of guy who could just really push them straight back into NL West relevancy after they slipped this year and the Padres took a step forward. So, I think if it's not, the New York teams, then I think out west in San Francisco is an interesting option.
Yeah, it's scary. It's every Yankee fan has run through it 100 times now, but I think the Mets are going to be real rumors, where that gets to, because I just know if I was a billionaire like Steve Cohen,
Yeah.
and I got the Mets in New York, and we've traditionally been a little brother of sorts, the way to erase all of that, like, I mean, that's literally like Thanos snap, man. If you sign Aaron Judge and the Yankees have been doing what they have been in recent years, it's a new world. It's a world I haven't lived in. The Giants are interesting because, I mean, look at the Padres, and like the Padres, San Diego's now become a baseball city. They had the owner and the front office that was ready to go for it, and they did, and they got Machado, and they extended Tatis, and they made all those trades for pitchers and everything. San Francisco has become like this money capital of the world, and they have a history of superstars. You mentioned that Bonds guy, that Judge, like kind of from the area. They're going to roll out a real number.
They will.
They are an organization that has proven they know what they're doing. Jerry Blevins, who I saw you interacting with our friend Jolly Olive yesterday, and you were like, "Is Jerry as sweet of a treat as he looks?" He is. And I believe I'm gonna butcher his name. What's the GM for the Giants? For Fareed? No. Farhan Saeed. I combined his name.
Yeah.
I guess Jerry played minor league ball with him, and he's like, that's one of the few dudes you come across who's like, you're like, he's wired differently. He is smarter than me. And if Judge is their like chess analogy, he's their queen. That's such a weird comparison. But if he is their ultimate move, and then they can do everything else gianty around it, and they can get seasons where they tap into Lamont Wade, and they can get seasons where they tap into whatever else, that's scary. That's scary. And dude, the Yankees are a mess if that happens.
Yeah, and that reality only, I think, just like jacks up the bid, because I mean, it's so funny to say, but it's like, can we afford to not pay this guy $40 million a year? Like, that's kind of the position the Yankees are in.
It's I mean,
and every time the last several off seasons, and you go back to Harper Machado, the shortstops last year, they also cited the prospects coming up, but every year they've cited like, oh, and we're gonna have to pay Aaron Judge at some point, and now it's time for that. So if you don't, then you just lied for nothing. Everyone extra mad. They gave themselves no excuses.
Lied for nothing. BBD sending daggers. Let's jump over to the shortstops, because like I mentioned, there's a really good shortstop class again, and we'll start off with your guy Chad Pinder. No, we could have a nice role with the team. Someone take
this guy superstar. He hits the ball hard.
Take a chance on Chad. He'll go to the Dodgers, and he'll be an all-star this year. Correa, Bogarts, Turner, and Swanson. How about this? I'll put you on the spot real bad. If you had to, if you were GM, Bailey Freeman, and you had your team and your owner just gave you a thumbs up, you get to bring in one of those shortstops. Which one are you bringing in?
Ooh, I think so. If it depends the situation we're in, I think Correa is the best one. I think he represents the most value over the next however long this contract would be, 8 years, 10 years. The ceiling with him on a season-to-season basis is insane because, this is his second time reaching free agency technically. And yet you have this optimism with Correa that maybe you don't have with the other shortstops you just named, where it's like, well, I think maybe his best seasons are yet to come. So I definitely pick Correa. If I couldn't, if money was indeed an object, I think Bogarts is a great long-term pickup for anyone because you put him over there at shortstop. He's just Mr. Consistent. He has the same season every year, and it's always great. And then probably after a few years of that, you can move him around the infield a little bit, and he hits well enough that there's no there's no like tweener issue where it's like, well, this guy's like a 110 OPS plus shortstop, which is great. But then if you move into second or third, it's kind of just good. It's like, no, this guy, he just rakes. So love me some Xander Bogaerts, love me some Carlos Correa.
Yeah, the Bogarts part of this is really interesting. As close as I am to the Yankees situation, again, said hi to Judge's wife twice. The Red Sox, I don't know what they're doing. We'll see if that Devers extension gets done. Bogarts, he feels like he's been there for a decade because he has. And I don't know. I mean, as a shortstop, it just gives me, and shifts are going away. I think a very smart team is going to sign him. And I think they're going to say maybe a year or two at shortstop, but it feels Simeon-esque to me that some team's going to say, because if you're going for 30-year-old Xander Bogaerts and you're going to throw, this has 6 years, 168. I mean, $28 million a year. That's a big boy contract. You're a team that's going for it, and I think if you're doing that over the next 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, for at least more than half of that, I don't think Bogaerts can be your shortstop. And I don't think that shot's fired at him. I just think it's very hard to play that position, and I think if he goes to third base now, you could be talking about a high-level third baseman. Or can he play second? I mean, probably. I don't know. But, yeah, he's a guy that I just have no idea. Because Boston should bring him back. He's been so good for them. And if they lose him, I don't know where they turn, and maybe it's one of these other shortstops. Maybe it's Dansby. Maybe it's Trey. Where do you think Trey Turner ends up? Fangraphs currently has his medium at 7 for 210. It's interesting because speed goes. It just does. There's nothing you can do. I got invited to a pickup soccer game last night. I declined, partially just because I was embarrassed of how I would feel afterwards. A lot of Trey's, what makes Trey over the top impressive and elite number one fantasy draft pick is the speed. At some point, that's going to start trailing. Do you think that affects his free agency in a big way, or has the hype video talked you into it?
Man, John Hamm, this guy, he had the world in the palm of his hands. He was Don Draper, and now he is Santa for the World Cup, and he is doing hype videos for Trey Turner. I mean, he is maybe of the guys we've named the most like low key interesting, because he has been just so good over the last 3-4 years. He's really ascended to this point where people are like, yeah, Trey Turner is one of the 10 best position players in baseball or something like that, or, at least in that discussion.
Right.
And you talk about the speed, you talk about, how he's going to age. I think actually, he's a weird one because I feel like his speed allows him to overperform a lot of his like hitting peripheral type stats. So, he's his strikeout rates and his walk rates, he's not a big strikeout guy, but he's not a big walk guy. His exit velocities, fluctuate throughout his career. And so, when you're projecting him long term, it's just like, I'm not really sure what I can picture a 35-year-old Trey Turner looking like, even though if you sign him to a 7-year deal, that is going to be year 5 of that deal.
Right.
I could definitely see him landing with maybe a surprise, like, hop on with like the Orioles or something like that. Feels like they'll make a move eventually, right? They've been saving all this money. Gunnar Henderson, great player, but you can move him around. You can move Trey Turner around. You have options there. So I think here's my prediction. I think Turner's going to go to the American League either way.
Okay. Man, it's nuts. his 809 OPS this year, lower than his career average, coming off some of his bigger years. I mean, it's still, hitting was down a little bit this year, so it's a 121 OPS plus. Man, I like you saying it feels a little funky. Whether that's, somewhere in the AL or kind of like maybe the Twins with Correa, like an opportunity fell in their lap and they were like, we have to do this. The Orioles would be some sicko stuff because that Mariners question I asked you before, which I think Mariners is the right answer. Who can compete with the Astros? Someone threw out the Orioles, and it's not nuts. If we're talking if no one can touch the Astros next year, which, again, baseball playoffs, something will happen, and it's almost near impossible to do that, although they've been to the CS 6 straight years. If the Orioles start pushing chips in with some of their young guys, and I don't know if it's Trey Turner, I would feel awful for him looking at that left field. We talked about 33-year-old Trey Turner trying to pull balls to left field. That's a nightmare. For what he does and what the stat page says he does. And we talked about Bogarts. Is he going to move to third or second? Is he willing to do that? Like, he's been a star shortstop. Trey Turner, it feels like he has the willingness that if it's second base, if it's left field, he's going to find a way, and whatever player he turns into, you're still going to get value from. Just because when the speed does start to go, which, hey, as far as I know, Trey's a pretty in-shape cat. He could still have 3-4 years of 20-plus steals in him, and then it becomes the argument, do you even want to do that because he's on that contract? Do you just save those swipes for when it matters? He's going to be a good ball player for you. There is a little bit of Trey Turner could end up somewhere weird, and
yes,
I kind of like that we stumbled into that. Let's pop back to the pitchers a little bit, because we did the big guy. I guess open board. You know my style by now, Bailey. It's probably too loose and it gets me into trouble at some point, but. I see Rodon. I see Eovaldi. What are we doing, Boston?
Yeah.
That team is going to look different.
They're in a weird spot too, because I mean the rumor coming out is that they're going to sell the team, and it's also like I want to tack on with the Bogarts discussion just a little bit. Trevor's story, something's wrong. And I think, it's like he does not I think his elbow is basically kind of foobar. And so it's not like, I don't think he emerges as an option to move over to shortstop to play, replace Bogarts either. So the Red Sox, it's a tough spot for sure.
They're going to do something. I mean, I'm Dansby. Maybe it's the hair beard combo. But like you already paying Bogarts. So if that's going out, you need something going in. But I just, the big free agents, and they're going to make moves, but when you see Eovaldi out and Bogarts out, like, it's not like you're going to re-sign those guys and add more. Like, I think you're going to try to sign some guys to replace them, and I don't know. With where the rest of that division is at, I kind of had a mid-season... and Jim and Trev kind of shook me off a little bit, as they normally do, because, Boston has had a lot of, recent success in 2018, still, winning a World Series like you talked about with the Braves. That carries over for a little bit. But man, if there's another down year in Boston, which, think about what we just said about the Orioles, the Yankees, if they retool the right way, the Rays are going to raise. The Jays were supposed to be next. And they still can be, and maybe they got their taste of humble pie, and they'll be back next year. But Boston, man, it scares me. Like, I'm not a Yankees fan, and there's a deep part of my core that is like, I kind of hope you guys stink.
Yeah.
Any of these starting pitchers jump out? Because after deGrom and Verlander, which, old man legend crew, hell, Clayton Kershaw, I should throw you in that mix, huh? How about Kershaw and deGrom? Just go to Texas. Why not?
Just do it.
Rodon is kind of the youngest, best guy out there. They have him for 5 for 135. and he's an absolute wild card, right? Because teams were horrified of his shoulder. All he's done is drop it. Lefty, not that that really matters, but it kind of does, man. Look around baseball, like good lefties are so few and far between. Is this the year Rodon finally gets his cash-in bag? And is it 5? Is it $27 million a year? What's it feel like to you?
Yeah, I do think he is gonna get the bag this year. I think he earned it. He's had basically 2 seasons back to back where he's mostly healthy. And as good as he was this year in 2022, and from like a pure like run prevention standpoint, like his peripherals over these last 2 seasons just scream elite, like front line, like this is your guy, game 1 starter in a postseason series. Like he has been insane. I have a weird pick for him as far as where he's going to land.
Love it.
And I would say it's only weird in the sense that he does not fit in with this rotation whatsoever. And that would be the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
I think the Cardinals, if you just look at, what happened to them, versus the Phillies, they got into a short season series versus a team with a bunch of maniacs on them. And they said, hey, hold on a second. We have like, a bunch of like finesse, like Jordan Montgomery types, and we have to face Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler back to back. And it's like, even though we have 2 of the 3 MVP finalists in the National League, this doesn't look good for us. And I think that's kind of and I think they just need that guy. Jack Flaherty, I love the guy. His career's taken a turn where I just feel like you can't really count on him for that at all. So I think they go out and they try to make a deal for Carlos Rodon, and I think it would be pretty similar to that median projection.
And man, the Cardinals, they had money coming off the books, man. But between like Yachty and Waino, although Waino said he's coming back, right? So yeah, I kind of like that. That's kind of what they're missing. They believe in all of their young position players. / they have Goldie and Arenado, so you can attack the pitching wise. I could see if there's a lot of these medians feel just low to me. Like I think the elite guys go for elite money, especially from what we saw from the Phillies this year. Like pay high end talent, get to the playoffs, and then let those guys work. The Dombrowski strategy, my guy. If there was anyone that I could see GMs end up just being nervous about 5 years, I think Rodon would be that guy. Just from all the shoulder stuff we've heard previously. Foolish. I think we're kind of coming up against it. Is there anyone? I guess I saw a lot of people in the comments that are like, "Who are your dark horse free agents? Like who are someone you're buying in?" And I love this time of year because I saw someone say Sean Manaea to the Orioles, and with that deep left field, I kind of just started drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like, yeah, Manaea just flips a couple curves out there. Someone snag it in the left, move Mullins over there. I don't care. Are there any deeper cut free agents that you're like, this is the guy? Like who are we going to be looking at as the value snags this time next year when we link up?
I like Benintendi. I think he represents, there are guys out there that you can sign to a 1 or 2 year deal and they'll give you a great 1 or 2 years and then they'll go and get paid what they're actually worth. And, you'll just have them for a year or 2 where they're undervalued. Benintendi to me represents the opportunity to sign a guy for 4 or 5 years at a relatively low AAV and get like a really productive player. So I really like Benintendi. I think he showed a lot with his plate discipline last year that tells me that he can be just like a good, top of the order leadoff type guy if he gets the right fit. Yeah,
that's equal parts exciting and scary because the corner outfielders this year are thin. And my Yankees need a corner outfield. He's technically coming from there. Although, he obviously got hurt down the stretch. But yeah, I don't think he's got a lot of competitors. I mean, a Mitch Haniger, where is Michael Conforto at? What Andrew Benintendi did this year, and you're going to get defense, and he should be able to just slap it around a little bit. And after watching what Houston did, and as baseball continues to evolve just a little bit, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of competition. And if the Yankees need a corner outfielder, there's other teams that need corner outfielders that, I think whether it's years or that AAV, I think he's going to get driven up a little bit because Nimmo, we'll see what happens there. He's going to get a bag of some sorts. Will teams talk themselves into him as a corner outfielder? Although I feel like he made a lot of growth as a center fielder. But yeah, man, after that, good for Benny. How about that?
Yeah, I know. What good turnaround.
After, you got Peter Gammons tweeting some weird stuff about your body, and then a couple years later, you're getting that bag. Bailey, it was awesome catching up with you, man. Anything you need to tell the people? What's your favorite video you made this year? Let's get emotional quick.
Yeah, I loved the the video I made about umpires. I think I think I gave people a lot to think about, and shout outs to Pat Hoberg, perfect game of the World Series.
Yeah, I know Jim. I don't know if he posted it yet, but his brain has been spinning on umpires recently because I think he was, not to give too much away, he was looking up the umpire that had to make the least amount of decisions this year, and I think there was a game where there was only I think after swings and misses and non-competitive pitches or pitches balls right down the middle, balls in play, I think there was 25 pitches that were shadow zoning. And Jimmy's like, you don't have to do anything. 25 pitches? And it's well,
you have to make the right call 25 times.
That's it.
They do it at a 40%.
Well, I'm happy that you're through another year, Bailey, and I obviously love that we in this new age of baseball that John Boy Media and you we're connected through it all in some sick way. So keep cranking, man. I'm excited. I think we're going to see you at winter meetings. Little teaser for that. Go watch Bailey stuff, Foolish Baseball or Foolish Bailey, his secondary channel, as he likes to list it. And one day we will make another UPA video out of the Park Baseball, and we won't release it to the world.
Right. Yeah, we will keep it to ourselves.
For personal use.
And
personal use only.
I kind of lost in that video. All right. Thank you, Bailey. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.